This woman knows what it's like inside an Israeli prison. We are calling her Nabila to protect her identity. She fears speaking out could put her at risk of being detained again.
In prison, it's like living in a mass grave. Nobody knows anything about us. Any one of us can die, and no one will know why and how. We only have the bare minimum to survive.
Nabila was held for several months after October 7, 2023 as an administrative detainee. That means without charge or trial. She says she was abused multiple times, psychologically, physically, and sexually.
Food was either not enough or rotten. We were beaten, and there was sexual abuse. This was not easy for me. It still affects me now. One of the guards put his penis through the cell window. I was shocked. It happened more than once.
Her testimony is not an isolated case. This video shows detainees being subjected to harsh treatment, including in some cases sexual abuse. It's been shared by the Israeli human rights group 𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙤𝙬. Their latest report, called Living Hell, documents dozens of cases of alleged abuse.
Israel's military has dropped charges against 5 Israeli soldiers accused of brutally abusing and raping a Palestinian detainee.
By dropping the charges, the military advocate general has essentially given soldiers a license to rape so long as the victim is Palestinian.
Medical records show that the Palestinian detainee was taken to hospital in the summer of 2024 with injuries that included broken ribs and rectal damage. He was never charged or indicted for a crime. The incident was captured by CCTV cameras. The IDF's then top lawyer, 𝙞𝙨𝙧𝙧𝙧𝙬 later took responsibility for the leak of the video. She has since resigned and was later arrested.
What's really sad is that in the minds of the Israeli public, this case has become about the conduct of the military advocate general as opposed to the conduct of those soldiers who apparently brutally raped a man who was handcuffed.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed the decision, saying that the state of Israel must pursue its enemies, not its heroic fighters. Israeli military attorney Itamar Ophir says he withdrew the charges, citing the misconduct of senior officials, like 𝙤𝙨𝙧𝙧𝙧𝙧, whose video leak, he argues, would impact the soldiers' chances of a fair trial. Ophir also claims that key evidence was missing as the abused Palestinian had been released back to Gaza as part of a ceasefire agreement.
The claim that this case is dismissed because of lack of evidence is untrue. This case is dismissed as part of a long series of willful decisions by military attorneys not to hold soldiers accountable for crimes they are committing against detainees.
The arrest of the 5 accused soldiers in 2024, not the charges, caused outrage in Israel. Hardline Israeli ultranationalists and members of the government violently broke into the detention center in protest.
This government in particular has advanced a tribalistic messianic narrative that the Jews are destined to control this land, our enemies are Muslims or Arabs or I don't know who. And you see that certainly in statements by senior government officials saying we need to back our security forces even when they commit rape.
Since the October 7th attacks in 2023, there has only been a single conviction of an Israeli soldier for assaulting Palestinians in detention, despite reports of systematic torture. Human rights groups warn that Palestinian detainees subject to abuse and violence are left with no legal recourse and no accountability.
This documentary on Israel's Channel 14 features soldiers who were accused of gang raping a male Palestinian detainee. They talk about the pain and trauma that they have suffered since the allegations surfaced, without a word about the Palestinian victim.
עברנו בשנה ו4 חודשים האלה, אפשר לומר, גיהנום בכל המישורים. איך נחזור לשגרה? איך נחזור לשגרה?
Their side of the story that they present in this film is that they were doing their duty to protect Israel and feel let down that Israel hasn't protected them.
הילדים עוברים טלטלה. הקטן לא הבין באותה תקופה, הוא רגיל שהייתי מתקשר אליו בערב בווידאו ופתאום אבא לא מתקשר, אבא בכלא. על כלום. לא קל.
This leaked CCTV video from the 𝙤𝙬𝙧𝙖𝙚 military detention center was broadcast on Channel 12 a month after the incident. It showed reservists from Israel's Force 100 unit pushing a blindfolded detainee against a wall while others held shields to obscure their actions. Afterwards, the victim was transferred to hospital with severe internal injuries consistent with violent sexual assault, including a ruptured bowel, broken ribs, and a punctured lung, which later required surgery. But the outrage in Israel has been directed at the woman who leaked the video, a former top military lawyer who resigned at the start of November. She now faces prison time, having been charged with multiple offenses, including breach of trust, obstruction of justice, fraud, and abuse of office. Meanwhile, the soldiers themselves are free, awaiting trial. Prosecutors have downgraded the charges they face to severe abuse and aggravated assault, and they're using their time to try to garner public support.
אנחנו גאים שנבחרנו במשימה, קודם כל, המורכבת, להתעסק עם התתי אדם.
In this press conference aired on Channel 14, the soldiers demanded vindication following the whistleblower's arrest.
אבל במקום חיבוק קיבלנו האשמות. במקום תודה קיבלנו שתיקה. לא נתתם לנו להגיב, לא נתתם לנו להסביר. עשיתם עלינו משפט שדה מול המצלמות, כאילו כבר החלטתם מי אשם.
And the soldiers certainly have their supporters. Protesters flocked to their defense when they were initially detained. This rabbi was filmed blessing one of them after his release. And right-wing politicians have called them heroes. And now Israel's government is on the offensive against the woman who exposed the truth.
זה אולי הפיגוע ההסברתי הקשה ביותר שמדינת ישראל חוותה מאז הקמתה.
In this Israeli version of the story, the soldiers are the victims, while the Palestinian man who was brutalized and thousands like him remain invisible, without justice, without a voice.
We begin with a controversial change to the death penalty in Israel. Just a few hours ago, the Israeli parliament voted to expand capital punishment, making death by hanging the default punishment for terrorism. It comes despite warnings from several countries, including Germany, the UK, and France. They say that this could damage Israel's democratic standing. Now, the legislation places mandatory death sentences on people convicted of terrorism in a military court. Critics say the punishment will, in practice, apply almost entirely to Palestinians and not Israelis. Far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, whose party introduced the legislation, says that the change will deter Arab terrorism. Our correspondent Emily Gordine, she followed the vote for us from Jerusalem.
Opinion polls have consistently shown that a majority of Jewish Israelis are in favour of the legislation, a reflection really of the broader right-wing shift in the country since the Hamas-led attacks on October 7th, 2023. Critics of the bill, including international allies like Germany, France, Italy and the UK, have warned that it risks undermining Israeli democracy. But that's had little effect on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, even though this isolates the country even further internationally. Palestinians in Israel proper and the occupied West Bank are scared of what this bill will mean for them going forward. The ones I've spoken to say it's inhumane and targets them disproportionately, while ignoring the violence Israelis inflict on Palestinians in the West Bank. It also turns the death penalty, which existed in Israel before, from a rarely used provision into a central instrument when dealing with Palestinians. There is one caveat to all of this. The bill will likely be challenged, and once a petition against it has been submitted, the Supreme Court would then have to rule on its legality and could strike at least parts of it down.
Amnesty International. Dated March 30, 2026. Israel/OPT, newly adopted death penalty law must be repealed. Israeli authorities must urgently repeal legislative amendments expanding Israel's use of the death penalty, adopted today with a majority of 62 Knesset members, said Amnesty International. Today, Israel's parliament, the Knesset, adopted the first in what threatens to be a series of laws facilitating the use of the death penalty, in a public display of cruelty, discrimination, and utter contempt for human rights. The amendment added to Israel's penal law, known as the death penalty for terrorists, expands the scope and facilitates the use of capital punishment, at a time when there is a global trend towards abolishing it. It also dismantles fundamental safeguards to prevent the arbitrary deprivation of life and protect the right to a fair trial, and further empowers Israel's system of apartheid, which is maintained by scores of discriminatory laws against Palestinians, said Erica Guevara-Rosas, Amnesty International Senior Director of Research, Advocacy, Policy, and Campaigns. It speaks volumes to the extent of Israel's dehumanization of Palestinians that this law has passed in the same month in which Israeli military attorney general dropped all charges against Israeli soldiers accused of sexually assaulting a Palestinian detainee, a decision celebrated by the Prime Minister and several ministers. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, wanted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes and crimes against humanity, was among those who voted in favor of the law. For years, we have seen an alarming pattern of apparent extrajudicial executions and other unlawful killings of Palestinians, with the perpetrators also enjoying near total impunity. This new law, which allows for state-sanctioned executions, is a culmination of such policies. Quote, Israel is brazenly granting itself carte blanche to execute Palestinians while stripping away the most basic fair trial safeguards. Quote from Erica Guevara-Rosas, Amnesty International. The new law explicitly creates two legal frameworks for the use of the death penalty in the occupied West Bank, excluding the illegally annexed East Jerusalem, and in Israel. Military courts in the occupied West Bank will be authorized to impose the death penalty against Palestinians convicted of deliberate killings in actions that are defined as terrorist acts under Israel's discriminatory counter-terrorism law. Only under special circumstances that the bill fails to specify will courts be allowed to order a life sentence, and life sentence only, instead. The defense minister is authorized to determine whether defendants from the West Bank will be tried before military or civilian courts. Those sentenced to death are not entitled to pardon, making this one of the world's most extreme death penalty laws. By authorizing military courts, which have a conviction rate of over 99% for Palestinian defendants and which are notorious for disregarding due process and fair trial safeguards, to impose effectively mandatory death sentences and ordering the execution within just 90 days of the final ruling, Israel is brazenly granting itself carte blanche to execute Palestinians while stripping away the most basic fair trial safeguards, said Erica Guevara-Rosas. Under the second framework applicable in Israel and illegally annexed East Jerusalem, civilian courts' authority to issue the death sentence would be expanded to include any person convicted of intentionally killing another with the aim of negating the existence of the State of Israel. Such an ideological requirement for intent practically means the law is designed to target Palestinians. Despite few amendments to the previous drafts, any death sentences imposed under this law would constitute a violation of the right to life and, when imposed against Palestinians from the OPT, may also amount to war crimes. The international community must exert maximum pressure on the Israeli authorities to immediately repeal this law, fully abolish the death penalty, and dismantle all laws and practices that contribute to the system of apartheid against Palestinians, said Erica Guevara-Rosas. Background. In addition to the death penalty amendment, the Constitution, Law and Justice Committee at the Knesset advanced on March 24 for a second and third readings the Tribunal's Law, Prosecution of Participants in October 7 Massacre Events, bill, which mandates the establishment of an ad hoc tribunal, effectively acting as a military court, to try individuals charged with participating in the October 7 attacks. The bill authorizes the tribunal to impose the death penalty on those convicted and allows it to significantly deviate from standard procedural rules and evidentiary laws if it is deemed necessary for the clarification of the truth and performance of justice. Amnesty International opposes the death penalty unconditionally, under any circumstances. Article 6 Paragraph 1 of the ICCPR, to which Israel is a state party, protects against the arbitrary deprivation of life, which is, together with torture and other ill treatment and punishment, absolutely prohibited under customary international law, international human rights law and international humanitarian law. In the Israeli context, where the justice system, particularly the military justice system, is notorious for its inherently discriminatory nature against Palestinians, and where convictions are routinely based on evidence extracted through torture and other ill treatment, the use of the death penalty under such laws would amount to a violation of the right to life and of the prohibition of torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment.
Quite ironic that the 1948ers have instituted a change to their death penalty law to include, quote, hanging, specifically targeted at non-Israelis, they say the Palestinians. They are in the spirit of Haman. Remember, the judgment was turned on Haman. So let's get into some scriptures because what they're doing is not biblical. Unjust laws can be made by anyone, as we see in Babylon the Great as well. This is Galatians 3:13. The anointed hath redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, for it is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. So what they're trying to do is say that these people are cursed, and by actually cursing people with the death penalty of hanging them. The same thing was done to the so-called blacks in United Snakes of America, and is still being done even in 2026 today. The biblical judgment is not applied with respecter of persons. And the fact is, they are not doing anything biblically. They're coming up with their oral traditions through their Talmud, their Babylonian Talmud, and they're changing laws that are established by the Creator so that they can do what they want to do. But we're going to see where it leads. This is Exodus chapter 12, verse 49. This is how it's supposed to be. One law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. Now, this is applicable to the Israelites. So we see why the Gentiles end up changing ways to meet whatever it is they want to do, whatever's in their frame of mind set that is set in evil. If they were the people of the Lord, they would be doing this. But they're not the people of the Lord. And that's how you know they're not, because they're deviating from what they're supposed to be doing if they were the people of the Lord, but they're not. This is Leviticus chapter 24, verse 22. Ye shall have one manner of law, as well for the stranger as for one of your own country. For I am the Lord your God. You see, this is what is supposed to happen. Let's get some more. This is Numbers chapter 15, verse 16. One law and one manner shall be for you and for the stranger that sojourneth with you. Matthew chapter 5, verse 21. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not murder, and whosoever shall kill, that is, shall murder, shall be in the danger of the judgment. You're going to be judged for doing murder. Matthew chapter 7, verse 2. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again. So you're going to be punished by the same laws that you create. Just like it says in Revelation chapter 13, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. So in this case, those who kill it by hanging shall be killed by hanging. Deuteronomy 27:19. Cursed be he that perverteth the judgment of the stranger, fatherless, and widow. And all the people shall say, Amen. Now that is talking about the Israelites. In this case, you must ask yourself, who is oppressing who? We know they're not the people of the land because the prophecy is that the Messiah, the anointed, will bring all 12 tribes from wherever they're scattered upon the earth back into the land, and the land would be in peace, and no one would ever oppress the Israelites again, nor would any evil enter the city. It would be peace. But we see since 1948, there's been nothing but war, war, war. Now they have a cousin partner of all the other Europeans, Babylon the Great, joining in the party to go against another Arab country that we know is Iran, formerly known as Persia. This is Psalms 103:6. The Lord executeth righteousness and judgment for all that are oppressed. Now, this is talking about the Israelites, but there's justice amongst all the other nations of the earth as well. There is justice and judgment to be rendered upon all the Europeans, all the Arabs, all the Africans, all the Asians, as well as amongst the Israelites. I leave you in the most capable hands of the Most High Yahweh, B'Shem Yahushai.